Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to the GDC Twitch channel. My name is Brian Francis. I'm a contributing editor at GammaSutra.com. I am a community manager at GDC, and we are here playing Indivisible from Lab Zero Games. This game just came out this week. It's pretty cool. It comes to us, like I said, from Lab Zero, and two of the folks from Lab Zero are with us today in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. Mike and Mariel, how's it going?
If I do this, am I in the center of the screen then? Never mind.
Yeah, no, not quite.
You have a whole hour of this.
Yeah. We're doing good.
Right on. I'm going to turn the volume down the game a little because I'm now having to deal with two different voices.
No problem.
One sec. Before I ask you guys to introduce yourselves, what I should do is ask Alex to introduce himself. Alex, we haven't heard from you in ages.
Hey, what's up?
How are you doing?
Just following. I'm all right. I was just following podcast rules here. I was going to wait till you finished up. Good. I'm good. It's good to be back. It's been a minute, so let's do this one up nice. Yeah, It's been so long, I've forgotten. I gotta log into chat. So anyone who's watching live, please know you can go ahead and drop questions for these two fine people in, and we will relay them. We prefer questions about game design and development, but we'll kind of take anything.
Right, Mike.
I just appreciate being called a fine person.
Oh, sure.
Speaking of fine people, oh no, that came out wrong. Mike,
yes.
Mike, would you start by introducing yourself first?
Hello, I'm Mike Z. I did some stuff on this game. I don't even remember what I'm called anymore.
I think the design lead.
Design lead? Okay.
Project lead?
Project lead and design director and lead programmer. No, wait, that's Rob. I did stuff. Yeah. If you don't like something, it was probably me.
You made a video game. Mariel, what is your role on this game?
So it kind of changed over the course of the project. So I started off as art director and lead animator, later became head of story, and now, because that's too many titles, I'm just creative director.
Right on. In the world of
non-creative director.
In the world of too many titles and too many things that we have to explain before we get started on learning more about this game, how this game was made, I'm going to go ahead and do a tiny bit of disclosure. Indivisible comes to us. Two of the other team members are Brandon Sheffield and Matthew Kumar, who are great friends of GDC. But they also worked on the game, so we felt it worth disclaiming, hey, they worked on both. They work for us. They work for the game. That had nothing to do. And I guess I should also disclaim I backed this game on Indiegogo way back when. That also,
awesome.
Thank you.
Right on. That had nothing to do with us covering the game or anything. I've been keeping track of games we wanted to cover, and this was one of them.
It actually did. It had something to do with you covering the game, because if you hadn't, you wouldn't be covering it right now.
That's not true.
Right?
Wow.
It might not exist yet.
Sorry, I didn't mean like bias-wise. I meant like if you hadn't given us money,
the game wouldn't exist.
There wouldn't be a game.
For sure. Yeah, let's start there, actually. I mean, let's talk about how this game came to be funded. I remember you guys started on Indiegogo, right?
Yeah. So I think we were kind of coming off of finishing all the Skullgirls DLC that we did, which we also crowdfunded on Indiegogo. So we'd how many characters did we release for Skullgirls? 5?
6, I think, because Fukua.
Okay. So we put out 6 DLC characters for Skullgirls.
Am I going to be wrong about that on a live stream? Sorry, I didn't sleep.
And once we finished that, we started looking ahead and thinking about our next project. And I think we all kind of wanted to work on something that we all would like to play in the end, just because...
No, 6 characters is correct.
Yeah.
The big band, Fortunes.
You're all right. There's no fact checking.
Anyway.
So we all just thought, like, what's a genre that we could tackle that we think we would all like to play in the end. And we kind of came to the consensus that it was kind of like this RPG.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started kind of developing this idea. We were talking with like a couple different publishers, but through that process, we kind of put together this pitch. And then we were able to take this pitch and bring it to 505, and 505 agreed to help fund the game if we were able to raise a certain amount of money through crowdfunding.
You did it. Sorry.
You did it. Yeah.
Guard break.
Oh, the guard break.
I was trying not to say anything because I want to make sure that people can learn without me saying anything. So continue.
So we had it up on Indiegogo. It was kind of a stressful experience just because we had to ask for a lot of money.
Yeah. So
ahead.
I'll interrupt for a
go
second.
ahead.
So I actually, I apologize, but what we learned from this crowdfunding experience is that Kickstarter has won the war.
Oh yeah.
We picked Indiegogo because we were asking for a lot of money, and Indiegogo took less cut overall, which when you're asking for like millions of dollars,
I think
matters.
it was 1.5.
Yeah.
Right.
I think actually Indiegogo was 1.3.
No, sorry, we were asking for 1.5.
Oh yeah, million.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like when you're asking for that much money, losing some percent to overhead just from your crowdfunding platform sucks. So Indiegogo took less overhead, but Indiegogo had so much less reach that people kept asking about, like, I can't find it on Kickstarter. Hey, I hear you guys are doing a Kickstarter, right? Kickstarter has become the Kleenex term for crowdfunding things.
Right. I say crowdfunding, but sometimes I'll kind of fall back and say Kickstarter.
You just say Kickstarter,
Yeah.
but it's like, yeah. So what we learned after that is, like, and throughout the course of the whole crowdfund, there were people that were like, I really want to back this game. I'm not backing anything on Indiegogo.
Wow.
Because
believe all
Indiegogo allowed people to put up projects that were like, whatever we get, we keep, even if we don't reach the goal.
I mean,
and that
there's
became their reputation.
Right. Like there's pros and cons, obviously.
Yes.
And at the time, Indiegogo was the right choice for us.
Yeah, like Indiegogo has been fantastic to work with.
Yeah.
It's just the reach and the public perception of the two platforms is like vastly different, and we learned that firsthand.
Yeah. So let's focus on that for a minute, because I think even when you're on Kickstarter at this stage in the game, when you're trying to crowdfund a video game, the market is so saturated and so full that, I mean, it's a challenge every developer we talk to get the word out about your project and keep people coming back to it. So like you guys dealt with that on Indiegogo. I mean, like 4 years ago now, but you know, as you were working through that, like how did you overcome that problem? Like how did you get people to go to Indiegogo and give you the money you needed?
I think it was just kind of like a chain reaction. Like we released Skullgirls, and then once we did the Skullgirls Indiegogo, we had the existing IP of Skullgirls to say like, hey, just you're funding more Skullgirls. Right. And then once we had success with that, I think that's only the reason why that we could go to crowdfunding with an entirely new IP. Like if we just came straight out the door with this game, I don't think it would have been funded.
Yeah.
I think we needed to have our existing reputation as a studio and someone that could deliver on a crowdfunding campaign. And that's why it happened at all.
Yeah. Another thing that really helped was we had the prototype, which was a double-edged sword, actually, because a lot of crowdfunding campaigns are selling you, there's the business term, they're selling the sizzle, not the steak, right? A lot of crowdfunding campaigns are like, we're going to make a cool game, and you're going to think it's cool. And, like, cool means something different to everybody, right? So I wanted to make sure, because, like, you are playing it now, right? And there's not an RPG that is like this, or a Metroidvania that is like this, because we did the battle system that's never been done. And I wanted to make sure people understood what the heck we were trying to do. So we had a prototype. And the prototype was, we worked for 3 months on a thing, and like parts of it looked like crap, and parts of it looked great, and parts of it played like crap, and parts of it played okay. But it was like, this is the idea we're going for. And a whole bunch of people during the crowdfunding campaign were like, there were 2 parts of it. One of them was like, well, I can already play this. Why do I have to give you anything? Like, you guys are basically done, right? And the other one was, well, if this is what you're going for, then I'm not giving you money.
Right. So
it made it too real. We couldn't sell the idea anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because people looked at it and they were like, well, this parts of this look like crap, so I don't want to pay for a whole game that's like this, right?
Do you think you would take that approach on your next project? Will you put like a playable beta or a demo?
This is probably suicide, but I would. Like, I really enjoyed being able to be like, look, this is exactly what we're trying to do.
Right.
Yeah.
I would. So I would like to reach the point where we don't have to crowdfund things anymore. I like crowdfunding because it shows that people really believe in the thing that we're doing. And like, we get people that are along for the whole ride.
Yeah.
It's extremely stressful and worrying. And for a lot of other teams and for another crowdfund that we do, like, you don't always make it.
Right.
And that experience was really harrowing.
Yeah. And I think also crowdfunding or not, I think as a studio, we do want to embrace open development as much as we can.
Yes.
So just streaming, sharing, bringing builds out to places to test. Just trying to be as open as we can without, obviously just spoiling like story or anything like that.
Oh man, we managed not to spoil 2/3 of this game.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised.
Nice.
Yeah, but just being open about development. I think we'll always try to do whether we crowdfund or not.
Yeah, I want to do. Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I want to do betas for everything that we do because the public feedback is the best part, and also it's a really good way to get word of mouth because people can play the thing you're doing.
Yeah.
We did backer previews for this game twice throughout the development, right? Those took a lot of extra work because we couldn't just chop out the beginning of the game because we wanted not to spoil things. So in the future, I'd like to try to organize whatever we're doing so that we can do that in like a manner that's not basically build a separate mini game for a month.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to not be one of those teams that's like, we're working on a thing, you're not going to hear from us for 2 years.
Right.
Well, good luck with that, I guess. That sounds like it's a lot of extra effort to have to like worry about putting together demos and taking part things, but I suppose the feedback is worth it.
Definitely worth it. Like,
Yeah.
even just like seeing people play the thing that you're working on and enjoy it really helps you be able to continue to work on it.
Nice.
Right? Because you know that like, oh yeah, people actually like this thing is really helpful.
Yeah, let's dig into that. I mean, I want to come back and talk about the business some more because I feel like your decision to go with the publisher is super interesting. But let's talk about this combat and this system. We got a bunch of good questions in chat. Bryant, how are you doing in there?
Great.
You're like,
I'm doing
yeah,
great. I'm
you're
just
tearing it up.
I'm just doing the Metroidvania kind of style, like explore, look around, figure out where I can go to figure out what's side quest and what's main quest. The combat system, which you just mentioned, like the design of this game, so you can see, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the stream, which I'm betting isn't a lot of you, there's 41 great people out there in chat, people like Almighty Mints and Theo does streams. Y'all seem pretty familiar with this game, but in case you aren't...
I didn't retweet this. Neither did you, right?
Not in time.
Sorry, I'm going to be rude.
It's fine.
No worries.
Yeah, please get more folks in here.
What is your Twitter handle?
Official GDC.
I think they, they tweeted us, so you can just...
I don't know how Twitter works. How do I even see that?
Anyway, so
there's
a Metroidvania-y kind of part of the game where you're here using abilities to navigate a 2D space, and then as you just saw a second ago, there is a combat screen where you are using the face buttons to pick moves for each of your characters. Those moves are then sort of manipulated by using different directions that affect the stuff. So, for instance, I'm going to get blasted by this asshole.
Wow, are we not PG?
Nice. No,
nope,
never.
We're not PG. You know, we can, it's for adults. GDC is 18 plus. Not that kind of 18 plus though. I'm good at this. Anyway, yeah. Alex, you had a question. Alex.
Yeah.
Well, no, not at all. I say let's get into some combat because I want to talk about the systems, and there are some great questions in chat. Let's start with one that is directly relevant to that. Almighty Mints asked any insight you can provide into how you balance combat for so many characters and possible combinations. I know there's a ton, right? I mean, there must be like well over 10 at least that you can get in your party at any one time, and there's a maximum of 4. So how did you guys think about adding characters and balancing?
Sorry, I've been bad at Twitter and actually couldn't find the thing.
Yeah, I'll help you. You answer.
I'm really bad
overrated.
at Twitter, okay? Yeah, so there are actually over 20 characters
Nice.
that you can get in your party. You can have 4 in your battle. Balancing is kind of the same way that we approached it for SG, right? So characters have attacks. Obviously, damage is an important part, but also in a game like this, width and size for the hits are important, right? Like Ajna's sideways axe swing hits multiple rows of enemies, and like her down does lots of extra damage. So we looked at the systems that we had in this game, which are damage, meter, and how fast your actions come back. And we basically balance things around their overall utility rather than just damage. So like Ginseng, every time you do a neutral attack, they stir their... Did you do it? Thank you. Did you actually retweet it? Or
yes.
I don't know what. Don't let me touch social media. Yeah, so Ginseng, every time you stir their mortar, it increases the efficacy of their next heal, basically exponentially. so that the next time you do an up attack, you get way more health back. But they don't do a whole lot of damage, and you do need healing very often, so they don't have a lot of cooldown on anything that they do, right? Whereas Razmi can reach anyone anywhere, can slow enemies, and has really, really good supers. So she's way slower to recover all of her pips. And like Ajna's down attack does almost twice as much damage as her neutral attack. So it has a much longer cooldown, and the cooldown is multiplicative each time. Right, so you cost yourself like 20% of your speed each time you do it. So if you mix up what you're doing, you can deal slightly less damage, but be able to do it way more often, or choose to do a huge amount of damage in one turn, and not get another turn for a little while.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're motioning.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Actually, sorry. The main thing I wanted to say that we were balancing around is we balanced not around level, but basically around player skill, right? That was the main thing that we had to do with this game, because damage isn't random and blocking isn't random and all the rest of that stuff. One of the things that we learned from the prototype, and again, public development is really useful, was to balance around block damage rather than hit damage, because since you can block whenever you want, assuming that people are going to be good enough to block all the time, even if it means that they can't use supers very often, was a big help. Because like the boss of the prototype, when we first played it, they were balanced around how much damage they did when you got hit. But like when you learned how to block, you didn't get hit at all. So like nobody lost to them ever. And it just was, oh, I'm blocking and then not caring for like 2 minutes, right?
Right. So yeah, it sounds like it's a very defensive game. Something that has really struck me, and this game you guys talk very publicly being strongly influenced, at least in combat design, by Valkyrie Profile, which I confess I never played. But in sort of, I know I'm a garbage human for a lot of reasons, but.
Well, I'm a fine person.
Yeah, no, you're fantastic. So I've been playing a little bit of this game and watching others play it, and something I've noticed immediately is that there's so much that I associate with fighting game design popping up here, right? So you're talking about like hitboxes and that kind of thing. I noticed there are different levels. There are it looks like high attacks, medium attacks, and maybe even low attacks. Yep. And there's all kinds of stuff there. So like, how did you choose what to bring over and integrate into this design? Those seem like very conscious decisions.
Yes. So this game, I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this because I don't mean art style or story or anything. I only mean combat. This game is what I thought Valkyrie Profile was going to be when I looked at the box before I played it.
Oh, yeah.
So Valkyrie Profile is the same, like 4 face buttons to do stuff with your team, but it's strict turns. Right, so everyone on your team goes however many times they go, and when you're done, the enemy goes all in a row, and then you go again, right? And it's damage.
That's what I thought this game was going to be.
Yeah, and blocking is RPG randomness and all that. So this game is basically Valkyrie Profile with Final Fantasy's ATB. So you characters can go whenever they want, and then everything else comes from fighting games. So blocking is up to you, because I hated it when it was like, please just block this hit and don't die. And then like they roll a 2 and they don't block it. And you're like, well, crap. I wanted everything that we did to be up to the player as much as possible. There are, sorry.
No worries.
There are up, down, and neutral attacks that you can do with every character. So every character has 3 normal attacks that they can do. Ajna has combo strings and some other characters have combo strings, but that's the basics. That actually came from Valkyrie Profile. Give every character 3 different attacks that they did in some order that you determined. So they would do like ABC or CBA or whatever. And how to give control over those things to the player. It was definitely, we want to give people different attacks, but it was mostly figuring out like how to give you control over that. That was a difficult part, because giving you like forward and backward, a lot of people didn't find it. Giving you up and down, more people found it, but the people that would find forward and backward didn't find it, so you have to tell people anyway.
Yeah.
And then like a lot of the rest of it came from trying to make it feel as intentional as fighting games feel when stuff happens to you, right? Like giving you defense as your own choice. There's even clean block, which is like parrying or just defend. So if you block at the last second with a character, they're blue instead of pink, and you get back a small amount of your action pips, so you can go sooner and you won't die. And as you upgrade your defense, you actually heal more and more from clean blocks. But doing that and like giving you combos and making juggles matter and making how big a combo you do matter and like what order you do attacks in, putting in guard breaks that are fighting game style. So that actually came out of like the way that you do guard breaks in this game is like very, very fighting game light, right? If you play Guilty Gear, which, full disclosure, a whole bunch of the meter management mechanics in this game are based on Guilty Gear.
Oh yeah.
I'll go.
Y'all got an insta kill in here somewhere?
No, we don't have IKs.
Oh.
But sorry.
What
But
about a rope cancel? No.
yeah, actually, I mean, you can cancel attacks into supers whenever you want. So
Yeah?
For expending meter, yes.
Brian, could you show us how? I don't know how.
No.
Oh, just in the middle of one of your attacks, do a super. Super is R1 plus attack.
Oh,
There
the
you go.
super. Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
So yeah, the meter management stuff comes fully from Guilty Gear, right? So if you want to attempt to block, it costs bar. You can still do it when you don't have bar, because that was really mean to not let you block in the prototype, and like whole bunches of people died. But if you want to attempt defense, it costs bar. The better you are at defense, the more bar you get back from it. And the better you are at attacking, the more bar you get from that. So the better you are on defense, the more effective your offense can be, because you have more bar to use. And the better you are on offense, the more useful your defense is, because spending bar doesn't matter as much.
That is
like,
wild.
That was, I love that part of Guilty Gear, of like, there was only one resource to manage, and it mattered everywhere. So I tried very hard to do exactly that same thing with this game.
Totally. Let's if you got a second, let's talk about design of the individual characters. There's a good question here in chat from Theodos Streams. Wants to know, when you were designing the game, was there ever a character that was almost scrapped because the design wasn't working, or you had to redesign it completely, maybe something to do with the art? Was there any like characters that almost didn't make it?
Kushi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kushi's character you meet a little later on, and she's like a girl that has a giant bird with her. And I think, Mike, you could probably speak to the complexity of like doing the two characters in one.
Yeah. So she's kind of Nakaruru, right? So you have a bird that you can tell to do things if you're standing on the ground, but then if you hit up, she gets on the bird and you get a different set of attacks, including one that's really good against groups and one that is basically Dragoon Jump from Final Fantasy, where you leave the screen for a while and then come back. And you spend all of your remaining pips to stay up and do extra damage.
Oh, that's good.
She was probably top 2 hardest characters that we actually had to implement, because coordinating a completely separate sprite that needs to be like where it has to be so that you can get on it, and all the rest of that is like really difficult in this game, because we also have collision to deal with. So like there was a lot of, okay, well, the bird gets stuck on a ceiling, the bird gets stuck on a ledge, like, you can't reach the bird, like, telling the bird what to do.
Yeah.
We actually ended up making one of those game design decisions that you make a lot for fun over everything, where, like, the bird can just go through all collisions because it solved every problem and actually made everything way more enjoyable.
Perfect.
Yeah, in terms of animation also, even though they function as essentially one character, we had to animate Kushi herself, Altun the bird, and then both of them together.
Yep.
So it was like 3 sets of animation to create one, coherent moveset.
And doing everything, right? Like, you have an idol for Kushi on the ground and an idol for Kushi on the bird.
Yes,
and it's like, wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that went into it. I think originally she was just cut, as well as Hunat and Zebotch, which are also another like 2-for-1 character. And then we got a little bit of an extension, so we put the both of them back in.
Yep.
Nice.
So, like, when you get Kushi, you will notice she doesn't have supers. Her bird attacks do basically super damage and have basically super cooldown. But she doesn't spend meter, she generates meter instead. That was a decently fun thing to have done, but it also stemmed from the fact that we didn't have the resources to go and implement and animate lots of extra stuff for a character that already had lots of extra stuff.
Right. Yeah, I can only imagine. And like, we should talk about that because the look of this game is outstanding. I mean, it's striking, it's beautiful, it's vibrant. There's a good question in chat that lead us in here from Art of Joichi. They want to know the monster designs are cool. So how did you decide how they attack and how did you come up with the designs? And I would love to hear more in general about the inspiration for this art style and this whole vibe. I know there was like a real Southeast Asian flavor flowing through it. So like, what inspired the look of this game and the design of the monsters in the world?
So that was something that I think was part of the idea early on. We kind of wanted to do a game in a setting that we felt we don't see enough of. And
balance that enemy. I'm sorry, that enemy used to kill you in like one hit. Please continue.
Killing it,
And
Brian.
the designer artist on Skullgirls, Alex Ahad, was a big part of it. He was the one that also designed all the monsters.
Creator of Skullgirls, thank you.
Yeah, creator of Skullgirls. So I think between those two things, like kind of the influence that he wanted to bring on, and the rest of the team was really on board with this idea and kind of like researching and exploring and reading up and just really kind of like getting into this world was a huge part of just setting up the world that we see in the game. And I think it is very fantasy, but I think you can definitely see the inspiration. And I think the setting does have a very distinctly Southeast Asian feel over, I don't know, other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're not a space marine and you're not from Japan, right?
Right.
I do also want to point out that we got to make this choice because we were in a space where we could decide exactly what we wanted our game to look like. But there are a lot of really talented studios making games in Southeast Asia. So if we can do a small bit to bring exposure to them, that is also really gratifying for us to be able to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, totally. Mariel, can you talk a bit more in depth about your inspiration and your process for designing? I'm presuming you were heavily involved with that, maybe not, but like the design of the monsters, design of the characters, how you sort of went through that?
Yeah, so the monsters we did mostly leave to Alex. That was kind of like his wheelhouse, so we took care of that. But in terms of the characters was very collaborative amongst all our artists. And so basically the way it kind of ended up working was when we had the crowdfunding campaign, we had it was kind of crazy actually. We had each of our artists just kind of come up with a design and we would throw it out there once we reached a certain number of dollars raised.
Yeah. Hey, if you're gonna do a crowdfunding campaign, you might want to plan more stuff in advance than we did.
Yeah. I think. Yeah.
It came to the point where it was literally like, we need another character design because we're going to be coming up on the milestone very soon. Who's got what?
Right. So it was kind of crazy early on. We were just kind of throwing things out. And then I think the problem we realized was that, we thought we were just kind of tossing ideas out there, but then our audience grew really attached to the designs.
Oh yeah.
Which is great, but then, once we had the money and we sat down to really figure out what this game was, we were like, okay, well, we kind of sold the game on these characters. Now we have to make them work. So we had a lot of meetings kind of getting together and figuring out like, who do we like? Who do we not like? Why do we like this? Why do we not like this? We also had to cut down the number of characters from our original pitch, I think, just because we realized it was too ambitious. So
and
just
deciding who to cut really sucked.
Yeah, just off pure numbers, like we just couldn't make that many characters.
Right. So let's get into that. Real quick, I'm curious, well, for other teams, like as you're trying to work through the process of winnowing down your options to fit in your schedule and your budget, like how did you decide what to cut?
It's hard because I think it's kind of like this continual process the entire time. You always think you want to start small and like scale up, but I think what always ends up happening is that you plan too much, and then you just kind of have to keep chopping as you go.
Yep.
Which is
I will just admit flat out, we are really bad at scope. I particularly am really bad at scope because I'm like, well, we should cut this thing, but like one of these parts is really cool, so can we fit this somewhere else? And then we should cut this thing, but one of these parts is really cool, can we fit this somewhere else? So a lot of it was just like, I don't want to get rid of it.
Right. Which then leads into us killing ourselves trying to get, as much of the stuff we wanted in.
Sorry, everyone, forever.
Yeah, but I guess, in terms of like, say, cutting characters, it just kind of came down to, we know it'll take this long to make a character. We only have this many months. And then from that, we just say, okay, well, we can make 10 or 15 or however many characters, and that's how we decide to cut stuff like that.
Yep.
I think a lot of it does come down to making, like, planning out each task and actually seeing where it fits into the schedule. Yep. And then once you see, you have too many tasks for the time you have to make it, then you can be like, okay, well, now we've got to prioritize what is going to be, what's kind of the core reason we're making this game. Does this task serve that purpose?
Yep.
And kind of cut it back that way.
There was a lot that Triage was really useful for because it forces you to take a hard look at the thing you're doing and be like, okay, this bit is really unimportant. As much as I like it, we can skip it. And there were a bunch of things that I wanted to have in the game that we skipped because it was just like, you know what? It's not core to the thing that we're doing, and it'll mean that this character doesn't get done, or we don't have this boss, or whatever. Or we don't have cutscenes, right?
A big one I think actually is probably the party select.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
We could probably talk about that.
Well, the one that I was going to mention is Antoine and Sangmu, right? We have two characters that are fully animated that will be added to the game that didn't make it for initial release because the choice was actually finish polishing the entire rest of the cast or implement these two new characters. And it was like, that's kind of a no-brainer.
And like real quick, like
really sad, right?
I think a lot of people, and I remember this. I mean, I'm pretty sure this was a Skullgirls thing a few years back. Like a lot of people who don't make games might not appreciate how much time it takes to implement a character like that. And you could polish, tweak and like double check the entire roster or add two more. And like that is such a significant amount of time and effort for something that can often seem so simple on its face.
Yeah.
I'm also going to tell the person playing you should totally switch targets to the ads because they'll kill you first.
You switch targets. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Right, you're killing it.
We could probably mention the party select. Like we had.
We had a whole mocked up and completely implemented character select screen that had a carousel and everything else.
Oh yeah.
And it was never quite as good as the box version that you got for this game that was in the prototype.
Right,
it was never as intuitive as the first version that we made. And we spent a lot of time on it, and we really tried to make it a thing that could work. And in the end, it was slower to use, it was more difficult to use, and it was entirely less clear, even though it was prettier.
Yeah, it was very like pretty. It had all the characters animating on the screen. It was like glowy and everything like moved, but it was just kind of like too much to look at.
Yeah.
It was kind of confusing.
Like actually using it as a character select was way harder.
Yeah.
Go ahead, one last thing is that I think we also cut it because it would make loading easier on the Switch, right?
Yes, we cut it because primarily the tech reason at the end is in order to have that screen, you have to have all those sprites loaded, and those sprites are pretty big. So saving memory on the Switch meant if we could cut that screen, then the Switch can only be forced to load the NPCs that are in the level and the sprites that are in your party currently.
Right.
And that really helped. So that wasn't like the sole reason, but it pushed it over. It was the last thing that was like,
that was the point at which we were like, okay, we just got to stop trying to make this work.
Yeah. And it was sad because we spent a lot of time on that screen.
Right.
I don't think anyone ever even saw it because it wasn't in the backer previews.
No.
Wow, that's extra sobering.
This maybe it's too soon, but like, as you look back on everything you did on this project, do you have a better idea of how you might avoid spending a lot of time and effort on something like that ultimately just doesn't work out? Like, is there a way you would cut it sooner on your next project, or is it just something that you have to feel out as you go?
I feel like it's kind of both, you know, like there's always going to be things that you just can't predict. Like I always say, you know, we've made a ton of missteps and mistakes on this project, and we'll never make those mistakes again. But next time we'll just make a bunch of different mistakes.
Oh yeah, no, that's game development, is never making the same mistake twice, but always being able to find a new one.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
So it's weird because like there was some stuff that was cut really early, and there were some things that was like one of the things we had in the crowdfunding campaign was we had different weapon sets, and we tried that for platforming and for combat, and it was way less fun than giving you access to everything all at once. And I still get people that are like, oh man, I was looking forward to switching weapons, and it's like, we had that for like 6 months, and it was really not enjoyable to do during the platforming sections. So we unified all of the stuff that she could do into one control scheme, which took forever. But that was like really early on, we realized like this is not working and we can't do it. The character select was more like, we all wanted it to be there. It just didn't work no matter how much we pushed at it. And like, sometimes you'll have this sunk cost fallacy, right? Where you're like, I spent so much time on this, I should just try to finish it up. And like, that's the thing that you really need to learn how to avoid in game dev, is you need to be able to objectively look at something and be like, it's not working.
Yeah.
Right.
It might have taken us, 2 months of like aggregate time, but it's really not working. And the character select ended up being one of those.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of devs we talk to really appreciate outside perspective on problems like that, whether it's playtesters or publishers and that kind of thing. So I'm curious. Let's talk about 505 and the partnership real quick. What drove you to seek out a publisher, and sort of why did you choose to work with 505?
Money. Continue.
It's a good answer. Yeah.
I mean, sure. We didn't think that we could make a full game off of just crowdfunding money, and we kind of wanted to really like level up our team. We wanted to kind of expand on the games that we could create, and we felt that the only way to do that was with like actual funding from a publisher.
And there are things that publishers do that smaller developers definitely can't, right? They have global reach. They have on-site and global testers. They have people who know how to contact first parties to do things. Like, we had first party contacts at the end of Skullgirls, but getting all of those was largely a matter of like, we happen to know people who now work at Sony from before, instead of like, we have a department that can do these things, right? Also, for serious, like, we couldn't have asked the public for the amount of money that this game ended up actually costing. I mean, we spent our whole crowdfunding goal and all the backer stuff, which was 2.1 million, plus the publisher contributed that amount and more. It wasn't as much as a lot of other games of this size. I will not mention any names, but like, we couldn't have asked for what this game actually ended up costing in terms of development time and resources and money. There was no way. Right.
And I think also, working with a publisher again gave us access to like we have testers that are really great, and we have a QA team that's like we have a producer over at 505, a couple of producers, who are really hands on with the game and just making sure it works, and like basically they make it so that we can actually just focus on the development and not worry as much about the peripheral stuff.
Yes, like they have a submissions team, right? So like, we don't have to have someone who is talking to Sony and getting reports back and pushing the button to put patches up and like scheduling releases and all that stuff. It's a help.
Nice.
There are frustrations, as there always are with dealing with any organization, but like, it's been exceedingly helpful.
Good. I assume it's with their help that you're able to do as many ports as you're doing, right? Or were those always part of the plan?
Switch definitely wasn't, because it didn't exist when we did the crowdfunding campaign.
Right.
Yes, they've been really helpful as far as like being able to provide dev kits and getting us first party information and like helping us find people to do the Switch port and us not have to worry about that as much. They've been really nice to contact, by the way. Hi, Sebi. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, nice people are good. I appreciate nice people.
Nice people are good.
I wonder if you're not comfortable or not up on this, we don't have to talk about it, but you mentioned making some changes to make things work well on the Switch. I'm curious, we haven't talked to many people about what it's like to try and port games to the Switch. Can you talk at all about the challenges you faced or any changes you've made to sort of make it run well on that console?
If I do that, I'm going to get murdered by the PR team at 505.
No worries. I would prefer you not to be murdered. So
I will just say one thing, which is the PS4 and XB1. Sorry, not Xbone.
Yeah,
I'm not a gamer anymore. Have 8 gigabytes of memory and give you most of that. Yeah. The Switch has 4 and gives you about half of that. Just on that alone, we've had to do a bunch of things that we didn't have to do for other consoles, like load things earlier and unload things earlier and not keep stuff around that we just didn't care about keeping around on the other consoles because there isn't the space for it.
Right.
It's hard. It's not quite as hard as previous Nintendo consoles were to port for, actually. But it's hard.
In many ways, it seems like the easiest Nintendo console to port to yet, but who can say? Brian,
no, that's definitely the case.
Yeah,
100%. That is definitely the case.
Brian, I've been kind of steamrolling over this conversation. You have any burning questions you want to squeeze out here in the middle of this?
Boss fight's really hard, guys.
Not at all challenging fight.
Oh, this is the prototype boss.
This is a good design. I like
this
design a lot. Yeah. Okay, let's go to chat.
I'm really sorry, Alex. I need to throw the ball to you. I can't.
In the prototype.
I cannot keep up talking and work on this boss.
There's
you got it. You're full health now.
Chat. All right. Let's see. Here we go. AJM Games Dev wanted to know. Let's talk about level design. What challenges did you face when laying out these levels? Going from place to place on a map is great, but what do you feel is the level design philosophy of Indivisible?
Level design is something we actually did have a lot of trouble with, just because I feel like we weren't equipped early on to really take on the level design that we intended to do.
Yep.
Just because the nature of Metroidvanias is, lots of backtracking, lots of finding hidden paths, and kind of, like they're big maps.
Yep.
And
they were much bigger to start with. We own your mistakes, right? We were extremely inexperienced at level design, because the level for a fighting game it's the same size.
Right.
And it's got nothing in it. It's a floor and 2 walls.
Yeah.
And there's
1 to 1.
collision.
Yeah.
Yeah. So initially, when we started doing level design, one of the things that I really wanted out of it, that we actually ended up keeping, much to everyone else's chagrin, is you can, by the end of the game, you can walk through the entire world. Everything is connected. You can walk and ability, right, around the entire world without teleporting anywhere. So that meant that every level had to be connected to one on each side of it, at least, right?
Yeah.
Which meant that there needed to not be like, this is a side with nothing in it, and that was a giant challenge for everybody. We went through a huge number of passes of designs for what each level was going to be. They were all way too big when we started. I will specifically say Matthew Kumar and JP and Earl went through and did a lot of work to get the levels down to a manageable size while still keeping the goals that we initially had. That I will specifically talk about. One of the things that Matthew asked us when he finally became part of the team was, for each level, what are the important things for this, and what are the goals that you want people to get out of this level, which is I'm dumb, and we never thought about that. And it became making each of the giant levels that we had, desert, which you're not at yet, was 4 times as big as it is, and it was just confusing and gigantic and like horrid.
Right.
And
I think
there was never the question of like, what do you actually want out of this level? Like, what's the important feature here?
Right. I think in addition to that, you know, just tackling level design, which is something we hadn't done as a studio, you know, we also had to beef up our environment art team because we didn't, you know, we had individual artists on Skullgirls just kind of like handling each stage. But now we have an environment art team.
Artists? Really?
What?
Wasn't it just Willie?
No, there were other people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think trying to find that balance of like, okay, we want to make, you know, this level design as good as possible. We want it to be the right size, but we also, like, we couldn't make it too big just because the environment art team couldn't keep up with the scale of the levels that they were, you know, early on. It was just too much to add art to because our artists are basically hand placing every single object that you see in the background. You know, we did have like some prefabs, but a lot of it was just built from scratch.
Yeah.
Right.
So finding that balance between, you know, fun level design that kind of like helps the game feel long enough overall, also kind of fitting in the story, like where the cutscenes were in the level, and then actually arting it all. It was just, I don't think we knew what we were in for.
Nope.
Right.
I think that's basically the slogan for this project.
Yeah, there was a lot.
I do want to offer a special shout out to our environment art team, who basically never complained the entire time.
They should have.
And we're just like, okay, what do you need done? We got
Wow.
it.
Yeah, I mean,
and people on cutscenes also, same deal.
Unsung heroes.
They were never like, you need to cut this part of the game explicitly because it's too much environment art. Like, we ended up having to notice that and like ask for being told that. They were pretty gung-ho to just do whatever was
but
necessary.
I mean, as a result, it looks amazing. It looks gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, the whole look and vibe of this game is outstanding. I was going to ask, you know, what...
You can just jump up that, by the way. Like,
got this.
you're outside and the fortress is falling, so you have low gravity, so you can just jump that whole way.
Nobody's watching or anything. Just, you know, don't worry about it. Just,
Right.
I was going to ask, like, how did you, you know, what did you prioritize when polishing your level design? But it sounds like you had to figure that out as well as you were going.
Yeah.
So let's see. We have so many fucking good questions here in chat. Let's see. Nope. All right. Brian, is there a way we can get rid of the mouse cursor?
Good questions.
I already got rid of that mouse cursor. Thanks, Alex, for spending 2 minutes of our precious stream on that.
Yeah, anytime. Ominous here has a good question about sort of like organization and ties back into art design. How much do you let your staff provide creative input? How do you organize staff input? And how do you keep that input from clashing during production?
I think everyone has say.
I have a separate answer for this question.
Yeah. Okay.
That was exactly what I was going to say, and I do not mean to speak over you. So
Sure. Well, I was just going to say, everyone, we encourage everyone to speak up, just because I think a lot of the issues we ran into development, we were able to kind of like avoid or circumvent because someone spoke up and just gave us an opinion that we weren't expecting. So we do try to encourage everyone to speak up as much as possible. But I think, like Mike, you and I, we're both kind of like the vision holders. So we know that what we want out of the game. And so, you know, we're always listening to feedback, but ultimately, once a decision needs to be made, it's going to be made by you or I, essentially.
Oh, wow. It's actually the end of his beam from outside. I thought I made that longer. Nice. Okay. That's a good bug. And I should remember about that. Right. That was the thing I was going to say is, like, we are, as far as feedback goes, completely flat. And I don't want us to change that. I've worked at places where it was like, you would say something about art, and the artist would be like, well, you're not an artist, so who cares, right? And the artist would come to a designer and be like, this part's been really frustrating, like, in me just playing it because I'm arting this part. And the designer would be like, yeah, well, you're not a designer, so shut up.
Get out.
And like, that sucks because the feedback that you get that's usually the most useful is from the people that aren't in your discipline, right? Because they notice things that you are not trained or are trained to not notice anymore. And like, I try to listen to absolutely everybody from everywhere at all times. And then like the way that I put it on Skullgirls was I'll listen to everybody, but the decision is mine, right?
Yeah.
And we got a bunch of good features on SG, actually, like the hold to pause, holding start to pause the game so that you can't accidentally do it by brushing the start button while you're playing, came from a random person on the internet. I mean, he's not going to think he's random, but who had a bunch of other suggestions that got ignored, but that one was amazing. So you never know where an insanely good suggestion is going to come from. I mean, that one got adopted by fighting games all over now. And it's the same from your development team, right? You never know who's going to suggest something that's totally going to change the way that you were thinking about something. But I still believe that the best games come from one person's vision or one person's vision for a part of it, right? If you have a collaboration for everything, it'll get super watered down at the end. So you need to be able to give people ownership of their parts.
Yeah.
I've often thought that the way that you get a really good game is by having someone who has a vision at the beginning, but then can properly communicate that vision to a team of people who will then believe in it and help you execute it, right? Because it's not just about one person knowing what they want. It's about one person being able to explain to other people so that they also know what they want.
Yeah.
If no one knows what they want, you're not going to get anything. But if only one person ever knows what the team wants, you're also not going to get anything because that's going to be micromanaging hell.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You want to go up outside, I'll help you because I'm here.
Because we have less than 10 minutes left. So if you have any good questions for these two good people, please put them in chat within the next 8 minutes or so. Before we get out of here, I kind of want to know, I want to know how it's doing. You know, you launched recently and hopefully it's all going well, but I also want to know what motivated your decision to sell the game where you do. I mean, when we talk to designers now and developers, so often a major point of contention is which storefront to put the game on and which service to put it out on. And that seems only likely to grow more contentious in the years ahead. So tell me, how did you think about how to sell this game and sort of why did you put it out the way you did?
I guess,
up there.
I guess you're referring to like Steam versus Epic now is kind of the discussion that we're having.
Right.
I guess for us, Epic came so late in the game that it just didn't really impact our decision at all.
Sorry. Yeah, some part of it was that we already had a Steam version that worked.
Right, yeah. So it consoles and PC, Mac, Linux.
Yep.
Was just basically it. At the time, that we made the decision, Steam was the thing, and so that's just kind of what we followed through. So we haven't been too... Hello?
Oh, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything.
I actually don't know
no one's watching.
There's been a lot of things exposed about the Epic Store, like that they give your information to their Chinese owner. And all that stuff. Personally,
before we wander down that path, I just really want to make sure that was actually confirmed, because that was a weird thing for a minute. I recall. Sorry,
it was a weird thing for a minute. I have no idea whether it was factually confirmed because we didn't come out on the Epic Store.
So, I don't want to. I'm not trying to defend the Epic Store here. I'm just trying to make sure our claims. We're on a live stream here, so we don't have the luxury of an editor.
Yes.
So let's.
Some have said.
Yeah.
But
I think the bigger point is just that, Steam was our option when we were deciding, and so that's what we just stuck with.
Yeah. Right. Steam was also really damn helpful on SG, and some part of it is I already know how Steam works. Some of it was we had a Steam build that worked. Some of it was we already worked with Steam, so we know how to put things up and test them and distribute them to everybody and all that. Right. And Epic showed up really late in our development cycle.
Right on.
It does seem like a very clean answer. We only have a few minutes left here. I do want to get in before we go. Mariel, we've low-key asked about the art style for this game. I'm going to say something that is not true, which is a dumb, what I might call a dumb gamer thought. Sorry, gamers. Is that 2D art is easy because it's not 3D art, and even though the character is moving in the 2D space, that therefore is easier than a 3D space because there's a whole other dimension. Again, not a good thought.
Mm-hmm.
What is
But I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
So 2D animation, it is hard. I think another thing that people don't really know about it is that it's not cheap.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the type that we do, where we are actually hand animating. We're drawing every frame by hand, essentially. I think there are ways to make 2D animation cheaper, like if you use, Flash style animation that are kind of like more like puppets. But I guess for what we specialize in as a studio, we really care about, hand drawn animation, and where we're doing every frame, we can kind of make everything as expressive as we want. We think it looks great, So there's definitely challenges for sure. One is just that there aren't as many 2D animators that do this kind of stuff as there are 3D, I think. Especially, I think, 2D game animators, because this is something that I've given GDC talks about, just the specificities of game animation is different than just animating for a movie or TV show. So it's like a subset of a subset. And finding people that can do that really well is really difficult. And then there's a lot of technical constraints, like we can't really have skins. We can't, we can't apply.
Colors,
right.
Yeah.
Like if we wanted to do the equivalent of a different outfit, or like swap a skin on a rig, like we can't do that. We just have to redraw the entire thing. The extent of the customization we can do is like colors.
Yeah,
palettes.
We can do attached things to characters, but that requires going through every frame and adding a point for the thing to be attached, and then animating the thing to have a frame that is in whatever attitude it needs to be for as many different versions of it as we need to fit the character.
Yeah, like a good example of that is in Skullgirls, we have this character Beowulf, who's a wrestler, and he has this folding chair that he can have either on him or off him. And for every frame of animation of Beowulf, we had to match it to a frame of the chair, and then designate on the frame of the character where the chair went. So you can't just like attach it to the character. That's all hand done.
You also have an example from this game. Whenever any of the battles end and the incarnations go back inside Ajna, they go back inside her forehead. That meant going through every frame of her and putting a point on the forehead so that they had some place on that art that they knew where to go.
Sure.
Right? I will also mention, since you talked a bunch about the art side of it, 2D is not any simpler as far as tech goes, and in fact it's more difficult than basic 3D for tech, because graphics hardware is designed around give me a whole bunch of textures all at once, leave them there, and then use them.
Yeah.
Right? Like texture this guy's chest and texture the wall, and then like leave those textures in graphics memory and send a new model that puts the texture somewhere every frame. In 2D, since you have a texture that is changing basically, and all of these frames of animation definitely do not fit on a graphics card at once, you have to update a texture every frame, and graphics hardware is really bad about that, especially when it's a large texture. So we had to do a huge amount to like decompress and update everything, much more than we would have had to do if we made the game 3D. Also, the short version of 2D is easier than 3D is look at Guilty Gear Xrd, right?
Yeah.
They made that game look 2D via 3D, and it was way more work than just making it look 3D.
But it looks
They've
incredible.
even given talks and published papers on how much more work it was to get 3D that looks 2D. So 2D is more work.
Right on.
Yeah.
Again,
Well, not more, but an equivalent amount.
I don't think anyone was saying that. I was just making it using a dumb argument to get to a helpful lesson.
No, but it is an argument that we have heard a lot.
Yeah.
I think my favorite is when we initially did the Skullgirls crowdfunding campaign. People were so upset over the cost of just doing a single DLC character So we would get comments like, why does it cost this much? This costs as much as my house.
Yeah,
I could do this for free.
Comment.
I could do this for free in a weekend. And we were like, please try.
Yeah.
Please do that. I want to see that.
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons we started all the open development stuff, is so that we could show people like, y'all are talking crap about game development. This is what we're actually doing for it.
Yeah.
This character costs more than my house was my favorite comment out of everything, because that doesn't even have anything to do with game dev. That was just like, okay, try paying 12 people for 3 months. It costs as much as your house.
Yeah.
Right.
That has nothing to do with what those people are even doing.
It's wild. I mean, dispelling the myths around game development is half the reason we're here. So, I mean, we're all about it.
That's why sometimes I make bad gamer arguments. I can summon my 13-year-old self who was arguing on forums the way Anja summons her friends from her head. Alex, I'm sorry to cut you off. Everyone in chat, thank you for your wonderful questions. I hate to do this to everyone, but if we keep going, we're just going to turn into... This 1 hour stream is going to turn into a 2 hour stream, and I would normally like that, but someone has to transcribe parts of it, so I want to make it easy for them. That someone is sometimes me. With that, thank you all for the 5 hour stream from Almighty Mints. God... not
I would sit here and keep talking.
Extra Life is coming up. No, we're not going to do that. No.
Right.
Anyway, so thank you all for watching the GDC Twitch channel. The GDC is Game Developers Conference. As you can see from our screen, we are going to be happening next March from the 16th to the 20th. I just had to look at my own monitor to confirm the dates. Well, if you yourself are a game developer, we would love to have you out there. We are past the point of talk submissions, unfortunately. We really hope, however, that you come out and check out some great talks. If you stick around this channel, if you click the follow button, you will get to, sometimes we just roll some talks on the channel, roll our old interviews, you can, but also more importantly, you get notifications from when we go live with people like Mike and Mariel, which thank you both so much. Every time we have a stream where the devs just talk and don't stop talking, I am so thankful, because A, it makes playing the game easy, and B, it makes asking the questions easy. And you two have been a fountain of knowledge today, and I'm very thankful.
You were actually very helpful. You found the one bug, and we don't have a good metric for how long it takes to complete the game yet, so an hour for Vimana was pretty helpful.
Right on. And also, I tossed Mariel. I showed Mariel a bug earlier that I stumbled on, but it was small.
Oh, yeah.
Very minor shader thing. Anyway, Alex, do you have, or if they have any questions more about, we got so many great folks in chat asking questions, where should they ask them? Where's the best place to actually get an answer? Because apparently Mike's bad at Twitter.
Oh, I have a Twitter. I'm just bad at every Twitter that's not mine.
I mean, we have we're active on our Steam community page. You can tweet us at Lab Zero Games. If you have complaints as a backer, please email us indiegogo@labzerogames.com. We'll try to get back to one of our almost 1,000 emails from backers right now.
That's the other side of crowdfunding.
Shouldn't be too hard to find us. Just feel free to reach out, and we're around for sure.
Yeah. If you have complaints for me specifically, you can at Mike Z Says SEZ on Twitter.
I'm at Kinu Cakes on Twitter.
And you have to say that forever.
Why?
Cakes.
Oh,
it's cute.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, I don't chat back much to people, but I'm always watching and thankful for all the positivity that comes in.
Right on. For folks at home, the game is Indivisible. It's out on PC and consoles. We should recommend. Personal statement. I recommend you check it out. Even though I backed it on, like I said, I backed it on Indiegogo, and we have friends of the show who work on the game. It's just cool. That whole hour was just cool. That boss fight was cool, even though it made me want to pull my hair out. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.